guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be sharing with you a recipe for sourdough crackers. Now, I've seen a lot of people recently jump on the sourdough bandwagon, especially with all this free time that they have in quarantine. So if you're one of them and wondering what in the world can I do with my sourdough starter, then you're going to want to keep watching this video. Sourdough starter here. I named her 11, and if you have not named your sourdough starter, then you need to, so be sure to name your sourdough starter. And if you have, leave me a comment down below and let me know what you named your sourdough starter. So let's talk a little bit about sourdough starter. Now, I'm definitely not an expert. I started several months ago, so I do know a little bit, and I kind of just jumped right in. It was really confusing at first. You may feel that way. But I just jumped right in, got started, watched a lot of videos, just kind of experimented, and several months later, 11 is nice and bubbly and doing really well, makes me happy with all the things that I can bake with her, and she can last basically pretty much forever as long as I take good care of her. Now, sourdough is pretty forgiving, so don't stress it too much thinking, oh my goodness, I did something wrong. So I just want to say that if you recently just started your sourdough starter and it's not very active, not very bubbly, don't get discouraged. It took 2 weeks for mine to actually take off and start getting bubbly and to get that rise and fall that everybody talks about. 2 whole weeks. A lot of people were saying, oh, after a couple days, mine was really bubbly and doing well. I was super discouraged, thinking something is wrong here, but after 2 weeks, it just took off, and it's just amazing. You feed it, and then you watch it go up, and you're like, oh, this is so exciting. It's kind of like another child to take care of, although a lot less messy. But anyways, don't get discouraged if your sourdough starter doesn't take off right away. One tip that I have for you guys is to make sure you use a kitchen scale to weigh out your flour and water. I did not start out this way, which possibly could be why my sourdough starter didn't take off. This is also a whole wheat starter, so that's probably also why. But I found great success when I measured equal parts water and equal parts flour. This is called 100% hydration. Measure in grams because you can get a more accurate measurement with grams instead of ounces. Usually I feed her about, depending on what I'm doing, if I'm going to be baking a lot, then I usually feed about 100 grams of water and 100 grams of flour, sometimes a little bit more. You notice here that I have about 4 cups of starter. That's because I've been doing a lot of baking with her, and today the crackers that I'm going to be sharing with you, I'm going to be sharing 2 recipes, which is going to be taking 2 cups, and I've got other baking planned, so you don't need this much starter, really. You only need a tiny bit, and then when you go to do your baking, you can add more. We love making pancakes with sourdough starter, and so I want to make sure that I build up enough for that. So I always have quite a bit on hand, but when she goes dormant and I put her in the fridge, I usually just have a little bit until I go to bake. Then I take her out and feed her a bunch, and then she just expands and is super happy. Now, you probably have seen a lot of recipes that call for fed sourdough starter, and you may be thinking, what in the world is that? Fed sourdough starter is starter that has been fed within the last 12 hours. Usually after 12 hours, or when you feed it, it starts rising, and usually after 12 hours, you'll see it kind of deflate and fall back. So you want to catch it before it actually starts to fall. So if you're planning on baking, like I was this morning, last night I fed her equal parts water and flour, and then I let her sit overnight. Now there was about 2 cups in here, so she has doubled a little bit. Now this recipe, you don't have to use fed sourdough starter. If you want to just jump in and make some crackers, you don't have to feed your sourdough starter and then wait a couple hours until it starts rising. But I just like to get in the habit of feeding and then using it after I feed it. You've probably seen a lot of recipes that call for sourdough discard. What is discard, and why do we throw stuff away? As you're building up your sourdough starter, you need to get rid of half of it each time you feed, because otherwise you're going to end up with tons of sourdough starter. So unless you're building up to make something big like pancakes that uses a lot of starter, you're going to want to discard your sourdough. So my sourdough discard is actually what I take out for baking. I always feed my starter, and then when I go to do my baking, I take out what I want, and then I always replenish and feed. Now, if I'm not going to be doing any more baking, I always feed her, stick her in the fridge until I'm ready to take her back out and do some more baking. Okay, you can go through. What?
How do you know it's not a him?
Because I named her 11.
Why 11?
You can keep your sourdough starter dormant in the fridge, and I would take it out about every 5 to 7 days take out some of it, feed it, stir it up, and stick it back in the fridge. Now, when you take it back out of the fridge to do some baking, you don't need to let it come to room temperature or anything. Just take it right out, feed it, and it'll get happy and bubbly and rise to the top, and then you can go ahead and use it in your baking. Now, you'll probably notice if you keep it dormant in the fridge that there'll be like a gray layer of liquid on the top. That's called the hooch. You can either pour that off if you'd like, or you can just stir it back in and feed your starter, and it'll be just fine. This recipe, I will link it down in the description box so you guys can have easy access to it, along with some of the modifications that I made. If you guys are interested in more sourdough recipes and videos, then leave me a comment down below and let me know what kind of videos that you guys want to see. So let's go ahead and jump right in and get started on these crackers. So I'm actually going to be making 2 cracker recipes, one sweet and one savory. So each recipe calls for 1 cup of starter. Now, most recipes have you actually measure out and weigh your starter, but this one just calls for a cup. So I'm going to put a cup in each bowl, and then I'm going to feed my starter, and since I'm not doing any more baking for the next couple days, I'm gonna go ahead and put it in the refrigerator. As you can see, that used up most of my starter. Now don't panic, this right here in the bowl is plenty enough to get us started. So come on over here and I will show you how I measure my flour and feed her and stick her in the fridge. I'm gonna store my starter in a pint-sized canning jar. I don't need a really big container for it in the refrigerator since I'm not gonna have a ton of starter here. So I'm just gonna scrape that all in there. And then as you can see here, there's only a tiny bit in there. You really don't need a lot of starter, because if you do need more, you just add more flour and water. Okay, so I'm gonna add equal weights of water and flour into this. This is called 100% hydration when you do that. I'm doing 50 grams each, and then I'm gonna give that a really good stir, put on the lid, and put it in the refrigerator until I need it again. I'm going to set aside one of the bowls of my sourdough starter, and I'm just going to work on the savory crackers first. So to that, I'm going to add 1 cup of freshly ground whole wheat flour. You can use white flour, wheat flour, whatever you'd like. Half a teaspoon of salt, a 1/4 cup of oil. I'm just using some olive oil here. You can also use butter or coconut oil, whatever else you'd like. And then you can add whatever herbs that you would like. I'm using 1 teaspoon of rosemary. You can use how much ever you'd like. You can use more or less. I find that if you use more, the crackers tend to take on a little bit of a bitter flavor. This I found was a perfect amount, so just be sure to adjust it to your liking. Once you've got that all mixed in and thoroughly incorporated, go ahead and divide the dough into 2 equal-sized balls, and then roll them off until they're nice and round. Actually, it really doesn't matter. But then you're gonna go ahead and put it back in your bowl and cover it with plastic wrap, and then stick it in the refrigerator for at least 30 minutes. So while that dough is chilling, I'm gonna go ahead and get started on the cinnamon crackers. So I'm gonna be adding the same amounts here, 1 cup of flour, and then I'm gonna be using some coconut oil, a 1/4 cup. You can, again, use butter or oil or whatever you'd like. I'm not melting my coconut oil. You can definitely do that. And then add half a teaspoon of salt. And then I'm going to sweeten the crackers a little bit by adding approximately 2 tablespoons of honey. Now, the first recipe that I made of this, I only added 1 tablespoon. It wasn't quite sweet enough, so this time I added 2 tablespoons. So definitely adjust it to your liking. If you'd like a sweeter cracker, then you can add more, and you can even use regular sugar, but I like to bake with honey. And then I'm also going to add 2 teaspoons of cinnamon, and again with this, you can adjust it to your liking if you'd like more or less, totally up to you. I'm going to use my pastry cutter here just to work that coconut oil in. It's totally unnecessary if you have melted butter or melted coconut oil, but I just like to use this as a little bit easier. I'm also going to divide this one into 2 balls, cover it with plastic wrap, and stick it in the refrigerator for at least 30 minutes. After your dough is done chilling, then you're going to want to take some parchment paper about the size of your cookie sheet. You're gonna need 2 of these, 1 for each dough ball. And the recipe calls for spraying it lightly with oil. I did the first batch, and honestly, I couldn't tell a difference. So it's up to you if you wanna spray it or not. Go ahead and roll that out as thin as you can get it. The recipe calls for 1/16 of an inch, so if you're into measuring and super particular, then you can definitely do that. But I just tried to get it as thin as I could, trying to keep it in a nice rectangular shape so that way when I cut the crackers, I didn't have all these weird edge pieces. The main thing is you want to make sure that it's all even, because you don't want the dough thicker in the middle because it's not going to cook evenly and the edges are going to brown a lot quicker than the middle. And if the middle doesn't quite cook all the way through, it's more of a doughy cracker and not very pleasant. Trust me, I tried it on some trial ones by accident and it definitely turns out better if it's all consistently thin. Once you've got your dough all nice in a rectangular shape, go ahead and take a pizza cutter and cut it into nice little squares. They don't have to be perfect. Mine definitely weren't, but you can just kind of eyeball the size that you'd like, and then take a fork and just poke each one. Top your crackers with some salt. I just have some pink Himalayan salt here, and I've turned the grinder to the coarse setting, and then I'm just gonna press my hands lightly into that to make sure it sticks. I'm gonna cut the excess parchment paper off. It's totally unnecessary, but it just bothers me having it hang out all over the edges. Once you have both trays all rolled out and ready to go ahead and place it in a preheated 350-degree oven, and these will bake for about 20 to 25 minutes depending on how thick you rolled them out. I usually set the timer for 10 minutes to start with, and then I rotate them because my oven doesn't cook quite evenly. The top rack always browns quicker than the bottom one, so I want to make sure I rotate everything around and switch up the racks. And then I'll set the timer for another 10 minutes, and then usually by this time the edge crackers are starting to be done cooking. So what I'll do is I'll just take those ones off, the ones that look like they're getting a little bit golden brown, and I will put them on a cooling rack, and then I'll place them back in the oven just to get the middle ones cooked. And usually it takes maybe about 5 minutes longer, but I like to keep an eye on the edge ones. My kids love to snack on them as they're cooling, so you can see there's not that many crackers left to put away, but you want to make sure they're completely cooled before you put them in an airtight container. So it is actually a couple days later, and this is another batch of cinnamon crackers that I have made. I decided to make another one to show you these really cute little animal cookie cutter things that I got from Amazon. I will link them down below my Amazon storefront. They are so adorable, and they make the Miles was super excited to help me with the cookie cutters here, and I was trying to get them to be really close together so that way we would have as little waste dough as possible so I wouldn't have to keep rolling it out. But I realized it was a little too hard for him to figure that out and kind of frustrating for him with me trying to help him. So I just decided to step back and let him cut out as many as he wanted, wherever he wanted, and then I would go back later when he got tired and I would try to pack them in quicker. But he absolutely loved helping me with this, and I thought they turned out really cute. I do have to say that even though this was a lot more work, the kids thoroughly enjoyed helping me and they enjoy eating them and they looked so cute. I just kept taking the extra dough as soon as we were finished putting out all of the ones that we had cut out, and I just rolled out the dough again, and we just did another batch of cutting and then took the scraps, rolled it out again, similar to what you would do for sugar cookies. So it was a lot more work, but again, the kids loved it. Now you can mix some cinnamon and sugar to sprinkle on the top of the crackers, kind of like a cinnamon sugar graham cracker does have that stuff on top, but I decided to just leave it because we didn't need any more sugar, but that is definitely an option if you'd like to do that. I just bake these the same way that I did the other crackers. Just make sure you keep an eye on them so that they don't burn. For this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe so that way you can see all of my other videos, and make sure you hit that notification bell. If you do choose to make this recipe, please tag me on Instagram at @thejoyfulmommy and follow me over there. I hope you guys like this recipe and give it a try. Thanks for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.